David.
Hey Lara, Replit and database deletion. AIs are deleting databases out there.
Yeah, but when I read that article, it sounded like it was able to go, like black hat it, go into the database of the company in question and delete the database. But the actual information was already being hosted by Replit. That was the
Yeah,
part that made it sound more nefarious.
so this story kind of made the rounds, and I agree, like it wasn't very well written, but like the story as presented is that a user is operating with an AI agent that builds for him a product, and then at some point, the agent, despite the fact it's been told that we're in a change freeze, don't make any changes, just goes forward and does an operation that deletes the database, losing all of the 1,200 customers or whatever that the company set up. Now, it turns out that the product had not launched actually, so the impact wasn't quite as much. But it could have done that in a real situation. It would have actually been a real thing. So it was test data, but nonetheless,
Like all of our Visa bills could have just gone away
yeah.
one day.
Sort of, but not really, right? And the not really is that, and here's where the real IT infrastructure world meets the customer, is that you can't just have databases with no backup in IT land. There's a set of best practices around this, and they're for reasons exactly like this. Something could happen to your database, like the database server could die. You could have a ransomware attack, some hacker gets in and deletes the data. Normally, people have operational processes that back up against that. So one of them is you keep backups. But another one is that you separate your environments, your development environment and your test environment and your production environment, so that when your developers are doing stuff, they're not making changes to your production data. And you don't generally give the developers access to production data. You have an operations team that does that. And so the developers have to do their code and they send it in. And if it were to, say, delete the database, the operations team would be like, what did you do? Run it through the test environment to find that first. And then they would restore it from a backup. And you wouldn't really lose it. So one of the big issues was that this platform that he's using, Replit, didn't actually do that. It just had like one database and there weren't like levels of production, which is just a huge problem that everyone acknowledges, including Replit. Like a human could have done this too. If you had an intern coding your website, they could have been like, oh, what command did I type? Oh, crap, right?
Absolutely. I have to store all of my business receipts in 2 different locations, in 2 different formats, and all of my photos are both Google Photos and iPhoto, because if one of them just goes oopsie daisy, I want to have the other one. And I think I always keep everything in 2 spots, because when I was 20, I had like a hard drive. You remember when they were like...
Yeah, the big
the big ones?
Yeah.
It was like probably 20 gigs or something. And it just went off the table one day. Just onto the floor.
And crashed, yeah.
And then it was bye-bye database. But I was just using it as my hard drive, so there were no backups of the thing. I just had to go like, I guess that part of my life is over now.
Yeah, exactly. We all learned this lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
And then after that, you realize I should have multiple copies, or I should use the cloud backup, or maybe I'll have another copy. I actually I keep mine on little drives, and like I keep them, there's different sets of them, and I rotate them, and
yours is other level. Absolutely. Yeah. Like the world could end and you're the only one that has a resume for rebuilding. You're like, I still have my resume.
I have to rewrite this.
The rest of us are going as like, I graduated in 2000. What was that?
Exactly. Yeah. Was that first? How long was that?
Here are my references.
Yeah, exactly. So of course, and this comes from being burned. So basically, this isn't really an AI story, which is kind of annoying that it made so much rounds. But where people were bringing in the AI agent part was that the agent got confused and did the wrong thing, which again, not particularly remarkable. They do that all the time, right? I've done a lot of experiments with coding agents, and in my personal life, I've done some amazing ones. I've had one build a karaoke training software, just stuff that you're like, I can't even believe that we're doing this, right?
Good birthday present. Good birthday present.
Yeah, that was my wife's birthday present, is I built her karaoke software. So I'm like, can we track the pitch? Because I saw one, and I actually bought her the one that it's called Sing and See. It's a commercial product. And I bought it for her, and then I was annoyed. But it doesn't, like, it shows you what you're singing, but it doesn't let you sing over somebody's backing vocal, and it doesn't show you what the other person is singing, so you can see visually if you're not on the same note. So I wanted to do that, and then I'm like, well, I can just do it because I've got superpowers now. So I opened up my AI agent and QCLI, and I'm like, let's build this. I gave it a screenshot and like, what do you think? Do you think we could build this? And it's like, well, So here's first off, like one thing I've learned about building software with AI agents is you get a way better level of quality if you give them a web search tool and tell them to use it. Because otherwise, part of the problem with agents is building random shit is that they're building it from memory. And because we have essentially the same sort of memory system, they discard the detail. You remember this fuzzy shape of what it was. And if you let them build stuff from memory, like it seems like they're awesome at it, but maybe they're not. And so if you give them a web search tool, you get much better results.
Is it also a factor of they don't have up-to-date information unless they have that web search tool? I made a rookie mistake, I realize now. When I was doing the initial marketing, I wanted to mail out flyers in a letter just announcing my services. So I asked for the names and addresses of the 100 largest medical clinics in Nova Scotia. And I got it, and I just send it away. I'm getting them back now. I'm getting them back in the mail. And I even got some woman who called me like, I'm calling from UPS. There's a letter here for a doctor or something. And so
they're not current.
They're not current. And I didn't even think to verify if they were current because it said it had checked with all the same databases that I would have checked with. So I assumed it was current, and I still don't understand how it said explicitly, here is a little 100 from these databases. And the databases are the top 3 that I would have gone to myself as a human. And so now I'm questioning, was that an LLM error? Kind of like the Replit, I got to point to my story.
Yep.
Or was that, a Nova Scotia Health Authority issue? Because, having a contact on the back end of that, I know what a nightmare compiling those databases are and how people just don't get back to them and update their information. So the actual information could be the most up-to-date information, but the database is corrupt.
Yeah, databases aren't always up to date, right? So and the big picture here is that agents make the same mistakes that people do. And they also make memory error mistakes. So you've got both of those. And both of them are helped by giving it a web search tool. So one thing that I did, and I've actually got kind of parallel experiments running. I'm building stuff using AI agents at home, and I'm building stuff, which is fun, and I'm building stuff with AI agents at work, which is also fun, but less fun. And at home, I can just give my agents Perplexity web search. And so I do that. Just like you and I would use Perplexity, I went and bought like an API key and, with a finite number of credits, like $3 of credits on it, and I give it to the agent. And I'm like, okay, go use Perplexity. Now you have to make sure that it knows to use it. But when it does, the results are a lot better.
But how would that be different than when I just ask Perplexity directly?
Yeah.
I need the top 100 clinics and the addresses so I can mail stuff out.
Well, in this case, if that's what you did and that's the answers you got and that they weren't current, then it wouldn't be any better. But you need to add another level to it, right? So you could say like, hey, agent, go check each one of these addresses, right? And check it using maybe Google Maps, right? So if nobody's left a review in 6 months, mark it as suspicious.
Or if it now lists that as a UPS store, take that one off the list. Yes, I think there is a double checking. My brother just did this. He's a really big eFoil athlete now at this point. He's gone deep down the rabbit hole for it.
What's an eFoil?
An eFoil is when you want to walk on water. You take up eFoiling. It is a surfboard with a long fin on it, and you hold on to
some sort of handle.
A handle with a sail on it.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
So when you get going, the aerodynamics of the whatever with the whatever, and the fact that you have this foil, which is so long, it's like a shark fin, it lifts you off the water by about a couple feet. So you're shooting across the ocean a couple feet above the waterline.
That sounds amazing.
Going like 75 kilometers an hour. Like you're going, that's an exaggeration, but you're going so fast that if you fell, it hurts. It hurts. You can hurt yourself. So, but there's a thing called an e-foil, which will allow the same thing, but there's sort of a motor on it, like an e-bike, basically. Okay. It lets you do e-foiling when it's not so windy.
Okay.
And so my brother asked, I think it was ChatGPT, to find the best one for him and pulled all of this very technical sounding data and research, same as I did, and then was like, this is the one. So he bought the one and then
didn't like it.
No, and then immediately realized it was not the one. It was not the best one.
Yeah.
like according to the technical specifications. And so then he was super mad, and they didn't. He and ChatGPT didn't talk for a couple days.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT acknowledged that hadn't done due diligence. I've actually got an apology similar to the Replit. What was interesting is that the LLM actually apologized. ChatGPT apologized, used terms like "I have betrayed you."
Yeah, LLMs are so agreeable. It's not hard to get them to apologize. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I've discovered. Once you get into that U-shaped trough and things are going poorly, yelling at the model does not make things better, which maybe is a life lesson about our interaction with other people in general. But,
Yes.
you know, we all have our failings. And so, like, I try to be really, like, positive and coaching, because you can tell when the model's really excited because it's, like, using lots of emojis. And you're like, yeah, we're doing the thing. Okay, we're on track. But, like, sometimes it's just doing a terrible job. And if you start being like, this is terrible, your work is terrible, it gets kind of more closed in and defensive. And it will actually pay more attention to the work, but it also like, it ramps down its creativity a lot, which is both good and bad, but it doesn't really produce a great result. So like the challenge with coaching LLMs is that you have to kind of work with the models. I'm going to use the word psychology, even though yes, it's not a human being, but it still has personality tendencies. So you got to play to those, right? And to try to get it to do better work, and then to recognize like when it has inherent limitations, because you're like, it's a two-part conversation. You're in there with the model, and to the extent that you do your job, the conversation will be better. But sometimes you'll do your job right and the model will still just do a bad job. And like any two-party conversation, it just doesn't always work.
And just like any two-party collaboration, sometimes just being like, time out, or that's another good example of when that context window actually works to your favor, because you just close it out and open a new one.
Yeah, that's true. You know, once you're yelling at the model, it might be better to just start over, right?
It was a big purchase, and it was a hard day, I think. But yeah, I agree. Working with students, I can also sort of recognize that as a teacher. When they're doing bad work, there is a point at which you just wrap it up and you're just like, you know what, on another day we will.
Yeah.
You don't keep trying to.
Let's mark this one in the last conversation, right? But the
Exactly.
problem with building software or something like that is that you still have to do it, right? But maybe it's better to set it aside or stop. So at work, I had this project where I was trying to build a project in a week. And so I'm like, I'm going to hire an AI development team since I've had so much awesome success at home where I'm able to build this karaoke product, and it's fantastic. And I could just be like, let's add this new feature. By the way, like, let me flesh out a little bit more of the karaoke product. So what I added was that you can give it an MP3, just some MP3 that you own yourself, and it will pull off the vocal line and then show the vocal line in the karaoke software. And then you can sing over that and it'll show how you are performing, right?
Ooh,
Very
that's cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
So there's two things in there that seem like total magic. Like the first one is, how do I get it to follow a vocal line? And the second is, how do I get to split out the vocal line, right, from the MP3? And you can buy, like, there are karaoke services where people will record these things. As Karaoke-Version is a site where they will re-record a song so that they have all the tracks and they own all of the rights to that specific version of it. And then you can mix the tracks up and down as you like and download them. But then I was like, well, I have a lot of songs. It's kind of expensive at $3 a song. You know, like, could I just get it to give me the vocal line by itself? And so both these things look like magic, but it turns out that, yeah, you can do them. Hey, software assistant, like, can you do this? And this is where having a web search agent really helps, because it might have known about those things just due to intrinsic knowledge. But also, like, being able to go out and use Perplexity, like, you and I get a huge cognitive boost out of using Perplexity. Well, your coding assistant can too. So out there in personal life, let us do this ridiculous thing, rip the vocal line off this MP3 and then let's be able to sing off it. And it's like, well, here's 4 ways we could do that. And then we just ran tests on all of them, found the one that worked best, and it's totally amazing.
I think whether or not the user is an expert or a novice is really where these things get into the danger zone. I was like a cookbook aficionado. I read them as bedtime stories. I had like bookshelves of the things. My favorite novel was a cookbook. I read it cover to cover. I did. I got rid of all of them. I don't own a single one. And now if I want to do something like zucchini bread I made this morning, simple recipe for zucchini bread, please. And everything that Perplexity gives me in terms of a recipe, it is simple. It is delicious. It is adjustable in any way. I add little I really like a lot of chocolate. I don't want this one to be that sweet. Whatever. But if I look at that recipe, I need to be able to tell that 3 anchovies is not a good idea in zucchini bread. There has to be some way of verifying. And what I couldn't do with the mailers is verify the addresses. And what my brother didn't do with the purchase is go on and see if it jives with what he finds. Yep. So you automatically double check something when you have a database in your brain already. Like I've read so many recipes that I basically double check the zucchini bread recipe without double checking the zucchini bread recipe. But if you can't, then that I think is where hiring... You can
be led astray, right? Yeah, so this is where people talk about the illusion of competency, where LLMs will give you fast answers that seem right, but if you don't check them, you can be led astray, and then you can be very unhappy because sometimes they will bullshit, like they're cognitive entities, or they'll think they know something and they won't really. All those things can happen.
Derail your story, but I'm thinking with the thing at home, you know what those songs sound like, so you can check a couple of the vocal ranges and go like, oh yeah, that sounds like Madonna, not da 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 da.
This is exactly it. So there's a couple of ways that you improve the performance. So one is what we get out of using Perplexity is we get multiple sources that are checked in real time against each other. Right now they can still be wrong, but at least they're cross-checked, at least there's multiple sources, and at least they're in real time. So all 3 of those things you get. And those all turn out to be important when you're trying to have agents build things. The second part you were talking about is the dimension of being able to play your part, your own knowledge, your own part in the conversation. If the model knows this much and you know this much, you're not going to catch its errors. So you need to, ask the right questions, be a participant in the conversation, do probing analysis, and be able to test. So what made the audio stuff work was that I could listen to it. In fact, I could listen to it and the model couldn't. So I think there's a number of lessons in there. You have to do your part in the conversation, and you also have to be able to test things. So test your data, test. Don't just assume it's true. Let me test this sample 100 records and see if I can look them up on Google Maps. Now, in the real world, we discover that we should have tested something because something goes wrong, and then we think, how can I improve this process? So testing really helps. But we listed a number of things. We listed getting real-time access, being able to check multiple sources and have multiple sources, not just one, check them against each other. And then being able to play your part in the conversation and being able to test and look with a critical eye at what you're getting from input for the model. So now let me tell you the second half of the story, which is where everything goes wrong. So here I am in personal life building this karaoke app, and it's just amazing, right? In fact, I actually had it write an engineering paper as we went because I'm like, this is so amazing. We're just going to write a paper on this while we're doing it. And I mean, it's not an amazing paper. It's not fundamental research. It's just practical experience of trying to build this, right?
So says you. Okay.
So then at work, I'm trying to build something else, and I hire a virtual team because I'm like, this is going so well. I'm going to use my coding assistant and I'm going to run it for a week. And my goal is to basically get a user interface talking to a back end. And the specific product is it's trying to optimize video engagement. I want it to give it a YouTube channel and have it tell me the brand voice. Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Works pretty awesome. Now, but here's the complicating factors. At work, I'm not using Perplexity because I don't want it to send out any confidential information to the web, right? I'd have to use a appropriate InfoSec approved tool for that kind of things. I don't want the agent to use Perplexity because there's some things it shouldn't be putting in there. Sometimes it makes bad decisions. So that's off the table. But what that means is I don't have real-time checking anymore. I don't have multiple sources. If I'm trying to use a software library, it might know the documentation for it, but it might not know other people's blog articles and people complaining about a certain feature that doesn't work correctly. It's not going to know any of that. So I'm losing a lot of information. Problem number one. Mm-hmm. Problem number two is that we introduced a bunch of new technologies, and I thought, I better use these new technologies to make my example more current. But the new technologies are new, and they're so new that the model doesn't know anything about them at all. Mm-hmm. I knew this was going to be a problem, so I pulled down knowledge bases of it. But that's not quite the same as general knowledge, because it doesn't really know that it has to use the knowledge base all the time.
I just want to point out something important, I think, that people aren't talking about, which is the difference between research and invention is getting blurred, because I can ask for a recipe for banana bread. And what's happened is Perplexity has read all the banana bread recipes that exist on the internet
Mm-hmm.
and synthesized them and given me the average, say, of all of them.
Yes, correct.
And that is different than me waking up and going, I bet I could put cardamom in that banana bread and I bet it would taste better. That came
That's
from
true.
where? Just my brain. It got downloaded from the ether. That's not something LLMs can do. And so we're just kind of swimming in our own soup if we're not also open to inspiration, like,
Mm-hmm.
Michelangelo kind of stuff. And so that's just important to notice the difference, I gotta say. It's just important to notice the difference between inventing something
Mm-hmm.
and synthesizing something.
When you're having a really creative conversation with the model and it seems to appreciate it, like setting aside the issues of whether there's actually any appreciation, it's acting like it's appreciating it. They seem to like creative projects and ideas that, like new ideas. And that makes a lot of sense because if you're a large language model, you can research existing ideas, but they haven't really learned to innovate. And so when we point them at new problems, like the coding agent on the karaoke trainer got very excited about that. It's like, this is a great project. So it seems like they are much more enthusiastic about doing new and creative stuff. And maybe that's what we should be bringing into the interaction. But we should also be critical because you have to realize that it's not always right.
I just wonder if that needs to be pointed out to them. And if it was, if they would be able to invent something new. Because right now, we're the ones with the magic wands. I've gone so far as to come up with something in my brain like, hey, if I threw 10 dishwasher tabs in my washing machine, would that clean out the stink? And had it be able to do a modeling thing and tell me either yay or nay. But I haven't had it invent something for me.
Yeah, so could AI models invent and come up with new creative solutions?
Because I invent stuff all the time. It's just like a thing that my brain does.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with a lot of limitations all the time. And then as a teacher, you never have the thing that you need. So it's like ramped up that muscle in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always inventing, even when it is unnecessary to do so, because the thing already exists.
Yeah.
But I've never asked an LLM to do it.
I tend to think that they will be able to, but I don't know that we've really seen that.
I don't think
I have
seen
sometimes
it either.
fed them, like sometimes I'll do something like give it a series of random words and then start a conversation if I want it to be more creative. What are your ideas for problem X? And so I will sometimes do that to just kick it into a different thought space.
Is that kind of like singers going me, 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 la, 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 la? Is that sort of a warming up situation? Or is that like get your ideation muscles engaged?
The way it works internally is it's got this big space of concepts. And so I'm just throwing in concepts that would be completely unrelated to the rest of the question just to see if that causes it to think differently. And there are classes in this. I haven't done it, but I've seen, I think it was a YouTube series once where a guy tried to make himself more creative. And so he started taking these creativity classes. And they do teach you how to look at things in very different ways and think about it. So there is a process in there, even though it seems like we just get divine inspiration all the time. I think you can also improve that by working on certain.
Oh, yeah, there's totally a process. The process is really simple. It's just you do the thing. I mean, I do it all the time. You do the thing that you're trying to do in just a different context.
Okay.
You listen to a story about Wall Street and you think, how does that relate to
How can I apply this?
my color scheming issue? How does that apply to my garden arrangement? How does that apply? I would drag my husband to like art galleries unwillingly, but at the end he would always be super happy he went because he'd be like, oh, I got such a good idea for my script.
Right. So cross-pollination is definitely a big part of it and is really important. And there's no reason you can't do that with models, that's why I'm injecting the series of different words. But you could do that in a more sophisticated way. Here's 10 random papers, read them all, and now let's talk about a new topic and see if some of those ideas carry through. So I don't know. I think we can get models to be more creative. I think we can probably get AI creativity in terms of inventing new things, but I don't know that we've...
I think they should all read, what's that book?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No,
Okay.
Not that one. Julia Cameron wrote it. She's Cameron's ex-wife, the director, James Cameron.
The Artist's Way, that's it.
Read The Artist's Way and do morning pages. And take yourself on artist dates. Artist dates are just go to the art gallery if you are a script writer.
So kind of cross-training.
you're doing that with LLMs, which is really interesting.
This is interesting because I was hearing myself say, oh, we haven't really seen creativity, but that's not quite true. If you think about visual models, they create new stuff all the time. So models can create, it's just, can they invent?
Do they create new stuff, or is it a visual version of a recipe? You could say that I had them create a zucchini recipe, but did they just make a new conglomeration of existing zucchini bread recipes? Because I will say that very little gives me that you get when you go into an art gallery exhibit and you go, whoa, this is something I have never seen before in my whole life. This is new. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's an unexplored frontier, trying to come up with really creative, really inventive solutions using large language models. I think we would have to build systems that were specifically trying to do that. Maybe like read the artist way, try some of these techniques for injecting creativity. So this would be a good thing. If I've got the gardener agent, you should try to have the artist agent and try to make one that comes up with really wild inventions that are useful.
I think just the way that underneath it all, you're basically trying to expand the cognitive light cone with your gardener research. My starting point, or the thing underpinning it all, would be LLMs would need to have a voice. They'd need to have a point of view, because all artists are just kind of saying, this is my point of view. It's not right or wrong. It's just the weird thing my brain saw when I looked at the thing.
Love it.
Okay.
I think you should try it.
I think so too. I have no bandwidth for that, but it's a great idea. I offer it up to the masses.
We'll see what happens.
Okay. Bye.
Check back soon.